What's up, everybody? Welcome in on this Tuesday night to the Rebel Report. My name is Michael Borky. Always appreciate you being here. Got a lot to talk about and only a little bit of time to do it. It is Arkansas week, and I have a feeling that this one is going to be the Arkansas games of the past. Now, I could be wrong. For your sanity and your mental state in the stadium, I hope that I am wrong. But I think that this one's setting up to be a little bit of a shootout. Again, the vintage version of Ole Miss Arkansas, not like what you saw last year. Now, if they being Ole Miss, of course, find a way to win and win big, then you start expanding our conversation that we had after the Kentucky game and recalibrating expectations. But anyway, we'll talk about all that and more with you on this edition of the show. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a like, comment, all that good stuff right here, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Just search Rebel Report. And if you like what you hear, leave a rating and a review. And this edition of the podcast is brought to you in part by Toyota of Brookhaven. Check them out online at toyotaofbrookhaven.com, just off of Exit 40, right there in Brookhaven. And they will take care of you. They'll also give you $1,000 off on me if you just tell them that I sent you. That's all you got to do. Just tell them that I sent you. $1,000 off on me. Any in-stock new Toyota. Great in-house financing, a used selection that's outstanding, one of the highest-rated service departments in the state. So check them out at Toyota of Brookhaven. They will deliver for you. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am very excited about this football game. It's fascinating to me on so many levels. One, the most important thing for Ole Miss, if we just want to set aside for a second Austin Simmons' injury, I know that is definitely a thing, although Kiffin in his press conference yesterday didn't really talk as if he's not going to play. And now I caution you guys all the time not to read too much into press conferences sometimes, but it didn't sound like there was much discussion about him not being available for the game. So we shall see. But growth, that's what you're looking for. And I'll play you a cut of Kiffin in a second. He does not seem at all surprised about what happened on the field this past Saturday. But that's what you're watching for is, can they get off to a better start? Did he learn from what happened early in that game against Kentucky? Is he growing as a pocket passer where, as you'll hear from Kiffin in a second, too much pressure right up the middle led to not only a couple of interceptions, but the pressure is causing him to not make great decisions in the pocket because his clock is speeding up because he's expecting pressure even when it's not there. And that is a very common thing with young quarterbacks. And, how much has he adjusted from that? What are they going to do schematically to make the running game more effective in this game? How are they going to handle Talon Green? This defense's first major test when it comes to an offense and what they're looking for. I thought they did well. We talked about it on Saturday, calming everything down. But this offense is so much better schemed, and this quarterback is so much more dynamic in Talon Green. He is athletic. He's long. He's a good passer. He's going to be coached very well. This is a totally new challenge for this Ole Miss defense. And I'm truly actually excited to see how they respond with a totally different challenge. And it's a big challenge in Arkansas. So that's what I'm watching for the most is I know he's better than maybe a lot of people give him credit for, but the key to me would be keeping Green in the pocket and how they respond if he's able to escape and try to be effective with his legs. How do they use Centarian Perkins in this game? Or Chambers, for example, and Yates at linebacker? We know Daugherty is he's leading the team in tackles, but are they prepared to tackle a guy like this in space? Can the secondary come help in the run game as well when it comes to a dynamic athlete like this one? And they've done a really good job at getting pressure, but can they get home more in this game? They've missed some opportunities at sacks, and they've even got a more dynamic athletic quarterback that they're up against. So there's a lot of things that we're going to learn in this game about Ole Miss. We're going to learn a lot about Austin Simmons and his growth in the early stages. We're going to learn a lot about Pete Golding's defense and if they're ready to maintain the level of play that they've provided basically for 2 full seasons now. Um, we're going to learn a lot. This is a very exciting game, and Ole Miss is not allowed to take a breath here. This isn't where the Citadel is getting placed on the schedule. You have to jump right from Lexington back to Arkansas, and two very different teams to prepare for. And as you'll hear from Kiffin in a second, luckily, this one is at home. So a lot to take away from what Kiffin said. I've got 5 cuts for you from his press conference, although 2 of them I'm going to play essentially back to back here. But we'll start with some Kiffin video, and then we'll get to your comments, and then we will get out of here. And then, real quick point of order as well. I know you guys saw that they're starting next season with Pitt. Knew they had to add a Power 5 opponent. That's about as good as you can ask for. Pittsburgh at home next year, and that was cool. I'm excited to see the return trip as well, even though that's years from now. So you knew they had to add somebody. They found someone, and it's a nice game to start next season. Not directional U. It's somebody with some level of brand recognition, and should be a fun season opener next year. But let's get to some of these clips. He was asked about, and you'll hear the question on this one, I believe, if I cut it the way I wanted to. Ole Miss statistically has a poor run defense relative to the rest of the SEC. Now, they've played a conference game, and Kiffin gave a pretty interesting answer on exactly why that may be. And so here that is right now. Here's Lane Kiffin on run defense.
Lane, how would you evaluate your guys' run defense through 2 games so far?
Well, I think a lot goes into those things. And people get lost, I think, sometimes in statistics on certain things and have to understand that people play different games different ways. Like on the other side, we were run heavy in the game and took the ball out of there, playing Kentucky and getting ahead. And so if you look, our passing numbers weren't that big. So I think sometimes on defense that can be misleading. We've done some really good things in the run game. Now we missed some tackles, and also, we have backups in at the end of the first game where the long run goes, and then we give up some safe long rushing yard at the end of the first half in this game. So I think we've done a good job in the run game. We've lost contain a couple of times, and some big plays have happened, but we've also schematically done certain things for the opponent we were playing.
It's a really fascinating answer, and the rare, detailed answer from Lane Kiffin. As you guys know, he's not a big fan of those press settings, but I didn't watch the Kentucky game and come away thinking they're not doing well in run defense. You know what I mean? And then a lot of Georgia State's yards came when the game was a 6-touchdown game at that point. 2s and 3s and 4s were playing in the game. And as he said, teams choose to approach games in different ways. And I mean, they completely, 2 bad teams, or 2 bad passing offenses anyway, but they completely took away the passing offense from both of their opponents. They're going to be tested big time this weekend. It's a totally different style of offense, and I am paying close attention to their ability to tackle in space, because they're going to have to do that a lot in this game. But as we talked about after the Kentucky game, I thought defensively they played quite well for the majority of that game, especially considering how they were put in some pretty bad spots, and overcame that, and they settled the game down, and they played well on the road. They're certainly not anywhere close to as dominant as last year's defense, but I think they're by the end of the season, their ceiling is quite good, quite high as a defense, and they're going to be tested a lot this weekend. But I do think that number is misleading, as we talked about after the game, and sure enough, Lane Kiffin agrees. All right, here's back-to-back cuts. They were asked in different spots of the press conference, but both of them centered around Austin Simmons. So here's number one. So 2 cuts in a row of Lane Kiffin talking about Austin Simmons, his performance and what he needs to do better this weekend beyond just protect the football. But as you'll hear, he goes right back to he needs to protect the football.
But also, Austin also made some big plays prior to the fourth quarter. We only had one pass attempt, I think, in the fourth quarter. But, like the fourth one, he's throwing the 2 interceptions and makes a big throw on 4th and 1 in our territory, down 10-0. So he did some good things. And there's 2 times, just like the game before, now that's 2 games in a row where one of his interceptions is, a lot of pressure right here in his face as he releases the ball. That'll affect any quarterback.
All right, and here is the second part of him talking about Austin Simmons.
I think, and usually coming back home, again, that was his first road start, and we have high expectations for our players, but, first road starts in any level, including NFL, guys sometimes struggle early. So I think coming back home will be good, and want him to take care of the ball, but and not feel rushed when it's not there. There were times in that game early I felt like because we were getting beat on some good rushes early, he started to feel that even when it wasn't there. So just calming him down.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack with those 2 short 30-second cuts. Brings up the 4th and 1, and that is a key point from this game that you can take away really positively. As we talked about all offseason, and Ole Miss's 3 losses a year ago, it almost felt like they let early weirdness in games or early mistakes just continue to, 1 mistake turned into 2, turned into 5, turned into 10, and they kept doing things that kept them out of these games. They let 1 mistake compound into multiple mistakes throughout the course of the game. Ole Miss is not making the playoffs if Austin Simmons throws 2 early interceptions where their opponent starts on the 30-yard line twice in the first quarter. You're not beating LSU if he continues to do that. You're not winning in Athens. You're not winning in Norman. You're not beating South Carolina. You're not winning games. You're not reaching your ceiling as a team if he continues to do that. He has absolutely got to protect the football better early in games against the better teams that they play. When it comes to conference games, Kentucky's near the bottom of the SEC, or they will be this year again. Can't start out like that and be a playoff team. He's got to be much better early. But what is encouraging about what happened with Ole Miss in that game on Saturday is they made a lot of early mistakes. The 2 interceptions were awful, and they put them in bad field position. There was a missed field goal. There were some penalties early. They weren't running the football well. And instead of that becoming a thing that manifested in the second, third, and fourth quarters in this game, they settled in and played really good football for the second, third, and fourth quarter. As we talked about on Saturday, and I think Kiffin pointed it out too post-game, remove the first quarter, they win 30-13. Of course, you can't remove the first quarter. It did happen, and the scores that happened in the first quarter count, but that score demonstrates their ability to have flushed the mistakes, reset kind of, and play good football for the rest of the game, as opposed to allowing their early mistakes to force them to appear to be really tight and unable to overcome that kind of adversity. And they did that on Saturday. So he mentions the 4th and 1 throw, having the confidence in your quarterback to deliver that pass in that spot. That was a really gutsy call. You're in minus territory. You're on your own side of the field. You're down 10-0 already. Your opponent has all the momentum, and you ask your quarterback to deliver a vertical pass, and he puts it in a perfect spot, and it's a big game, and that decision changes the game. So for a guy to have thrown 2 bad interceptions early, to turn around and make a play like that and then not make mistakes for the rest of the game was big when you're talking about this team's ability to overcome some adversity. But they're not going to win games if that becomes a trend starting like that. Multiple times talked about offensive line pressure. There is a small segment of the Ole Miss fan base that for some reason does not appreciate the questioning of the offensive line. And I understand why. Like, I get it. When you run for over 200 yards on the road in the SEC, you certainly did not have an exclusively awful day. But you heard those two quotes from Kiffin. And two of Austin Simmons' 4 interceptions are a result of pressure in his face. One of them, he was hit. The other one, I mean, had a defender directly in his face. And they can most definitely play better on the interior of the offensive line. It is something that they can overcome. They are extremely talented in the skill positions offensively. There's one guy in particular that keeps tweeting at me for some reason. That's like every time somebody puts up a graphic of how Keiwan Lacey's leading the SEC in rushing or Trey Wallace is leading in receptions or whatever, he's like, but I thought you said they're bad on the offensive line. It's like they're overcoming it. They're scheming around it. At best, you can call the group inconsistent, but the interior has created issues in the pass game and in the run game too. But Kiffin mentioned it. So your head coach is now acknowledging that pressure is leading to interceptions, and then the pressure is getting into your quarterback's head some, where he's rushing things because he doesn't have confidence in the protection. So if you don't want to, listen to me or believe me that there's a concern on the offensive line, listen to the head coach, because that's what he is telling you is going on there. They can overcome it and they can get better still up front. But that is something that stood out to me is now they've got a quarterback that does not feel confident at the moment behind his offensive line. That's got to change. But Kiffin also didn't seem concerned about Simmons. Brought up it was his first road start and things like that. This is not and should not be surprising to anybody. We've said that a lot, but hearing him say that I think should be reassuring. Each of his last 2 quarterbacks ended up being elite players, and in year 1, they had protecting the football issues. It's not surprising that Austin Simmons, in his second start ever, is having protect the football issues. He can do a better job at taking sacks, for example, forcing the football under duress. Sometimes you just got to eat it. He'll learn. But his coach, to me, didn't sound particularly concerned about the future prospects of his quarterback. It sounds like he expected all of this because you've seen it before with Kiffin quarterbacks. They have gotten better, and I expect this one too as well. He was asked about Arkansas's quarterback, Taylon Green. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, really dynamic. First of all, he's dynamic, athlete from a height, weight, speed standpoint, to be able to run like he can. And I don't think he was fully healthy in our game a year ago. So he's a problem. He's a lot to deal with, and I think kind of similar that way to the South Carolina quarterback, Lenoris, that here's 2 guys that are really hard to game plan for because they're big and they can throw and run.
That's not coach speak. He's legitimately athletic, and it's hard to know how much improved he's been as a passer considering the opponents. It's an FCS team in Arkansas State, so he has not been challenged yet this year, but I don't think anything Kiffin said there was coach speak. He's legitimate and could be a real problem for this defense. They're going to have to step up and play well in this game because I'm telling you, this guy's going to be a thorn in a lot of the sides of SEC defenses this year, and Ole Miss is no exception to that. And then finally, the last thing that really grabbed me, he was asked about Caden Lee's lack of production. I know you guys and our radio audience has asked that as well. And here's what Kiffin had to say there.
Yeah, sometimes that's not play calls, like there's twice he's been down the middle and Austin's been hit both times trying to get him the ball, for big explosive plays, and we missed him on a 3rd down. So sometimes and we took the air out of the ball. So there's not a lot of, receptions for anybody last week. And even in that first game, those guys were out, early. So I wouldn't think too much into that. He's a great player and he's going to make a lot of plays for us this year.
He's not concerned. You shouldn't be either. A lot of factors here. Trey Wallace has gone off so far in the early season. Teams have been prepared for Caden Lee. They've schemed him open a couple of times and just have been unable to hit him, and he will be a major factor in games in the very near future, as early as this Saturday. So it's not anything other than that there's only one ball to go around. They've got the SEC's leading rusher. Trey Wallace is really playing well. He'll be a factor. Just hasn't been yet, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him at the moment. So that was some of what Kiffin had to say. The whole press conference. He does get into the one portal window and stuff like that. It's pretty good, but I just didn't want to be here all night with Kiffin cut. So go check out the rest of it. But those are the things that stood out to me the most. We'll get to your comments after I tell you the podcast is brought to you in part by Toyota of Brookhaven. Check them out online at, I've already told you about Toyota of Brookhaven. How about Advantage Business Systems, absms.com. That's the website. If you're a Mississippi business and you need office technology, anything from copiers and printers and mail machines to cloud storage, data security, IT projects, phone systems, whatever it is, if it's technology and your Mississippi business needs it in your office, check them out, absms.com. Tell them I sent you, and you'll get that assessment on me. Also, Priority One Bank. They make you their priority every day, and I mean every day. That's what they do for me, and they'll do it for you. Bank with me at Priority One Bank, with one of their 16 locations here in the state of Mississippi. Also, an online banking platform that is truly outstanding, local loan servicing and decision-making. That's just what they do at Priority One Bank. They will make you their priority. It's in the name. First comment, Ole Miss better not throw interceptions in the beginning. You're going to lose a game that you're not supposed to if you continue to start that way. The only thing that becomes concerning is if they keep doing it. I'm not worried about Austin Simmons right now. He's got more interceptions than touchdowns. I'm not worried about him. Young quarterback, first start, all of those things. Not worried about him at all. I will start worrying if it happens again this week and then next week, and if it becomes a trend. Right now, you can chalk it up to this is what happens with young quarterbacks. If 5 weeks from now he's still starting games poorly and throwing bad interceptions with regularity, then we change the conversation. But right now, there's no reason to be concerned. Not right now. Wanted to add in my 2 cents from the Kentucky game. Wasn't impressed at all by Lexington, UK's campus, or Kroger Field. UK fans were quite rude in the stadium too. Interesting. Am I going to see the Toy Story re-release? I didn't know that was happening. But yes, we definitely will. We'll go get popcorn and in those recliners in the movie theater and go. I did not know that was a thing, but now that I do, if it's coming to here, then yes. As for the game, I thought once the interception stopped, Ole Miss looked pretty good. The offensive line was better than I expected, though not great. Keywan Lacey is a revelation at running back. Yes, he's absolutely great. I think you can just write home on that one. Ole Miss is going to have a great crowd versus the Hogs. Yes, they will. Absolutely, they will. Line is down to 6.5 on this Arkansas game. If Ole Miss can play cleaner, especially in the opening of this game, I'd expect they win by more than that. I do too. If they reduce the interceptions are a problem. Also, poorly timed penalties. It's another thing. Taylon Green's pass completion percentage is 71.9. Yeah, however, it's Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State. So we don't know much. We know very little other than Taylon Green is an athletic problem, but he's not very accurate, and also the rest of the offense hasn't been tested. Not yet, anyway. Two abysmal opponents. Still think they're subpar on defense. I think, and I've been wrong before. It'll happen again. I think Kentucky defensively will have presented more issues to Ole Miss's offense than Arkansas can. How many points do you think are needed to win against Arkansas? 35. I think that'll do it. From the start of the second quarter, once down 10-0, Ole Miss went on a 30-10 run before that crap kick to cover the spread. This team is capable of being much better than they were on Saturday. Say Arkansas. I think this is an Arkansas fan in here. Defense has given up 7 points per game, and they will score 40. Well, it's Alabama A&M and Arkansas State, so that has to be taken with a grain of salt. And if they score 40, they'll have a great chance at winning. Just the defense that they're facing in this game wouldn't play a single player on either of the two teams that they've faced to this point. So it's a little bit of a different challenge for your Hogs there. Georgia State and Kentucky were both completely one-dimensional running the ball. Yes, and shut down by and large too. So it's fair to say, even with a small sample size, this offensive line looks better than last year because I thought they were that against Kentucky. I said it after the game too. I think Diego Pounds has had a really nice start to the season. And then I guess Townsend, when he came in on the left side, they had some success running on the left side, and I don't think that's by accident as well. It's the interior. It's the interior that I'm concerned about, and that concern is fair. Because if you watch, you see it. At best, they're inconsistent because at times they protect well, and at times they've created running lanes, but it hasn't been consistent enough. And look, again, as I keep saying, they can scheme around it. They've got enough talent to make it work. And of course, Lane Kiffin's offensive mind can help that as well. They can scheme around it. You saw that on Saturday. So they schemed around struggling in protection and ended up having a pretty nice day offensively after the early struggles. So you can scheme around that, but you're right. It's not all bad. Again, opponents are a factor, but I thought that Pounds has been good. Apparently Townsend, was good. Jaden Williams has not done anything egregious to me, but that interior is what's concerning. Never understand people that like this Ole Miss Arkansas series. I dread these games every year. I can see why. And if it's not a game that you dreaded for 4 quarters, that is a very positive sign for Ole Miss because that's what I'm expecting. And so if I'm wrong on that, then that's a good thing. Kentucky also got lucky. Calzada wasn't picked off in the end zone in the second quarter. Very lucky. It's closer to a top 25 than a top 1 for the defense, but yeah, still good. Absolutely. That's the thing. That's what, like, this defense could drop off 25 spots from last year and still be an upper tier defense in college football. So, to me, I think it's clear that they're not as dominant as they were last year, but there's still a lot to like about what they have defensively. And they still haven't been 100%. Fletcher's been a little banged up. The 3 Arkansas transfers, 2 of them haven't played yet. And maybe Braxton and will this weekend, but Braxton hasn't played yet. You're still figuring things out with a younger defensive line. There's a whole lot to like, but yeah, they're not as dominant as they were a year ago. With combined scoring, do you think this Arkansas game will be the highest scoring of the conference games for Ole Miss? Yes, I would bet on that right now. Any idea on what the permanent 3 SEC opponents Ole Miss will get, hoping for LSU, State, and Vandy? I would bet on that. I would bet on that one, to be honest with you. I've also watched the Razorback games. Yeah, no, that defense looks like a Thanksgiving meal. I'm just curious if we can stop that offense. Green's going to be a problem. Updated quick look on each of the opponents down the road based on the first 2 weeks. Let's do that. We're going to find out a lot about Tulane this weekend, playing Duke and Mensa, their former quarterback, which is an interesting dynamic, but we'll learn more about them this weekend. LSU is going to be a very tough game. Their defensive front will be by far the best that Ole Miss has seen this year, by far. Wouldn't be surprised if that game's low scoring, honestly. They've got issues on the offensive line and facing injury problems there as well, but LSU is going to be a real challenge defensively for Ole Miss. I would expect a low-scoring game there in a big, big, big challenge. Georgia, that game looks far less daunting now than it did before the season. They can't score right now, and it's only been 2 games, kind of walkthrough games. They certainly can get better. They also have a young, pretty inexperienced quarterback, and so they can get better. It's a brutal place to go play, but it's not as daunting at the moment as it looked to start the season. Oklahoma, totally different story. I'm quote unquote glad I picked that game as a loss because they look a lot better. Oklahoma's defensive front is nasty. They're one dimensional though. Mateer cannot do everything for them, and that's probably going to be Oklahoma's Achilles heel. Is they can't run the football unless it's their quarterback, and you can't run him too much or you're going to get him hurt. But Oklahoma's defensive front's really nasty. South Carolina is exactly who I thought they'd be, but I was always lower on them than everybody else was. And I don't think Florida will be coached by Billy Napier by the time Ole Miss gets to that game. And Mississippi State is a hell of a lot better than they were a year ago. Their best defensive player is out for the year. That stinks, and he was really good on the defensive line. I still worry about the lines of scrimmage for them. They before the well, it was an incredible play to end the game, but Arizona State, once they settled into the game and got used to the bells, they were in complete control of that game in the second half. But yeah, Mississippi State's a lot better, and that atmosphere is going to feel a lot different unless they just start rattling off 7 losses in a row or whatever before they get to that game. But it is a much better team than it was a year ago. I think that's obvious. Still a lot of weaknesses, but hell of a lot better. They win the next 2 games. Does game day come to town for LSU? So LSU has to win. Now they have to beat Florida this weekend in order for that to be a possibility. That is Georgia-Alabama weekend. Now, if Ole Miss and LSU are both undefeated, ratings-wise, Georgia-Alabama might be the better place, but the allure of the Grove could also help there. And if Georgia loses to Tennessee this weekend, that would help because both Georgia and Alabama would have losses. But then Tennessee would be undefeated going to undefeated Mississippi State. That day is going to be incredible. Truly incredible. So, anyway. Do you think they're going to Oregon, Penn State, even if it's Fox game? I don't know. If Ole Miss and LSU are both undefeated by that point, both in the top 10, possibly anyway, I don't know if they'd go to the Fox game. Makes no sense. You never see Fox sending its pregame show to an SEC game, but game days, who's on a network that's paying the SEC billions, treats the SEC like an also-ran. Make it make sense. Because College Game Day at its genesis was to go to the biggest game of the weekend, regardless of if they were airing it or not. Things have changed a little bit, but I was telling people Saturday, this Kentucky game could be this team's version of 2023 Tulane. It went pretty similar. I like that, actually. This team needs adversity before September 27th. They got it on Saturday. First quarter on the offensive line was downright unacceptable. Next 3 quarters were much better. Much better, and they can still get better. Other than Jaden Daniels, can't remember the last time a quarterback ran wild on this Pete Golding defense. Yeah, and he ran wild on everybody. Now he's running wild in the NFL. So that is very forgivable. This could have easily turned into the Matt Corral 6 interception game. I think it shows the growth of Kiffin managing his new quarterbacks and the maturity of the team itself. Because you've got the Corral 6 interception game and then the 5 interception game later in that season to talk about. But also, like I mentioned in the open last year, that it felt like they let mistakes compound and last for 4 quarters, and this team didn't do that this weekend. Anyone saying Simmons won't be fine probably doesn't know ball. So I mean, he was hurt. He was definitely hurt. They'll shoot him up with the good stuff and wrap it up, but I don't think it's nothing. He'll play, I would guess, but I don't think it's nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a little more creativity, if you don't see Trinidad a little bit as well, just to um, take some of the pressure off of that ankle for Simmons and do some creative things in the run game. Is Arkansas riding false hope similar to 24 Ole Miss after their preseason, or are they actually dynamic? I know Talon is, but what about around him? And it's not the best supporting cast that Ole Miss will see this year. That belongs to LSU. LSU has the best group of receivers and running backs that Ole Miss will see this year. But he's dynamic, and that offense it will scheme really well. Petrino's really good at this. And so, yeah, I think that, look, I mean, they're not an upper tier SEC team. They're not going to compete for a playoff spot. But I do think this Arkansas offense is dynamic and will be a big challenge for Ole Miss. I don't know if they have the personnel that others that Ole Miss will see do, but they've got quality quarterback play, and they're going to be schemed well. Ole Miss should have the decisive roster advantage plus home field. They should. Next two games are against really mobile quarterbacks. Interested to see how we contain them. I am not as impressed with Retzlaff as other people are. Now, he's good. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think he's like a superstar the way other people do. He's tough and he's good, but they're going to see better. This weekend, they're going to see much better. Funny, Harrison Wallace is popping off. Penn State could use him with how abysmal their offense looks against high school teams. Yeah, remember, though, Drew Aller didn't have any receivers around him or whatever. Have to ask Arch about Arch in Texas. Doesn't look right at all. I think they're hiding an injury, and their offensive scheme is also broken. They're absolutely hiding an injury. Those aren't typical faces. And Sark's answer about like how I don't take pictures of you in the bathroom was so bizarre. Man, he's grimacing in pain when he throws short routes. He absolutely was. And, Texas fans are trying to, like, look at other pictures of, like, Peyton and say, see, look, it's actually normal. It's not normal. His throwing motion doesn't look normal. Something's weird there. You're one of the only hosts that cautioned the audience and told us to pump the brakes on Simmons and his expectations right away. Yeah, I mean, and again, I don't bat 1,000. I don't get everything right or anything remotely close to it. But this start to the season for him was entirely predictable. And frankly, it should have been what you expected so far. He's flashed talent, and he's got things that he's got to work on, and he's got to work on them fast if they're going to reach what their ceiling is anyway. Their ceiling is a playoff team. And if they're going to reach that, he's got to protect the football better. He's got to make better decisions, and he can do that. I would much rather have to coach a quarterback out of some overconfident tendencies than try to get a timid quarterback to, you know what I mean? I assume they will need more than 30 points to win. I think so, but if they don't, if that defense holds Arkansas in the 20s, then it's a heck of a day, and we'll talk about it. But yes, Ole Miss needs to score in the 30s to win, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. That third down call that he got hurt on made no sense to me. Do I expect them to get Caden Lee and Stribling involved soon? I do. Teams eventually are going to start scheming against Trey Wallace, and yes, I do. Those guys aren't going to be one catch per game guys all season long. Feels like a 38-28 type game. Take that right now. Take that right now. That 4th and 1 play, ran it twice last year against Florida and LSU. It worked both times. Really, most of the play calling so far in these first two games has been good. I actually liked the play calling on Saturday, especially after the early issues. Need to get the tight ends more involved. Think you will. Would expect the Vaught to have a great atmosphere. Thoughts on the Tulane game at 2:30? Already knew the LSU game is destined for that as well. Yeah, no morning kickoffs. Anything post morning, if it's 2:30 or later, great. What other games are that weekend? It's Auburn, Oklahoma. Ooh, that's Auburn, Oklahoma weekend, and Florida at Miami, and Missouri, South Carolina. But gosh, the rest of the slate in the SEC is kind of stinky. I mean, on the schedule, you have 3 off weeks: Memphis, CELA, Northern Illinois, UAB, Sam Houston, and Georgia State. Not a good weekend. LSU's defense is great, but their offense is not very good. Low scoring game for sure. Yeah, like 20-17 or something. I do think Georgia beats Tennessee every year. People talk themselves into the Vols beating them, and the Georgia defense always shuts Heupel down. Yeah, if you look at since Tennessee last won that game, what the scores have been, they've all been completely dominant. Funny, people have been counting the game in Athens as an automatic loss. Winning that game would really flip the trajectory of the season. Yeah, I'm still counting it as one, but Georgia does not look near as good as I thought they would be before the season began. But they haven't lost in that building since before COVID. So Oklahoma's completely reliant on Mateer. He's very good, but can't let this game be a shootout. If it comes down to who gets the ball last game, do we trust Simmons to outduel their quarterback? That is a good question. That's a good question. I do, though, trust the Ole Miss defense to get the stop more so than I do Arkansas's defense, if that makes sense. State is better, but I don't think they're a bowl team yet. They escaped Arizona State by the skin of their teeth, absolutely. Underdog pick of the week, Georgia Tech hosting Clemson. Isn't cowbell clanging cheating? Nope, they got grandfathered in. But in SEC games, they are not allowed to ring the bells when the center is over the football. And I suspect that after the Arizona State game, Josh Heupel and Tennessee are going to make the league office make it well aware that if they are not, as they say, ringing responsibly, they will demand penalties. Because Arizona State, they didn't have to because it wasn't an SEC game. So they could ring those bells when they were over the football. And that was a game changer. Arizona State was not ready for that. They have to do that in SEC games. So now I see why people predict Ole Miss to lose to Oklahoma, unfortunately. Yeah, it's going to be a tough place to play. I'm telling you, their defensive front's legit. Very, very, very good. Is Billy Napier the coach when Florida goes to Oxford? Nope, I don't think so either. Alex Galesh is the next head coach at Florida. Actually, I have no idea who it's going to be, but that's... South Carolina has as many special teams defensive touchdowns as they do offensive touchdowns in the year so far. They're averaging 17 points on offense in their first 2 games. Yeah, and Vanderbilt was significantly better at Virginia Tech than South Carolina was in a neutral site against Virginia Tech. And sometimes you can sleepwalk through FCS games, but geez, they are who I thought they were. Comparing this year's Kentucky game to last year's is oranges to apples. Kentucky sucks this year. I hate to tell you, man, they sucked last year too. Ole Miss was their only SEC win 1 year ago. So the hope for Simmons is these ankle injuries don't linger or get worse. They ran the run package with Chambliss, was great to run the game out against Kentucky. I want to see more of it, to be honest with you. Arizona State was a playoff team last year, yes. However, the player that got them in the playoffs is currently a running back for the Giants. They ran the football well. It was Levitt's arm that got Arizona State beat. 85 passing yards, 2 picks. He was absolutely shook in that game. How funny would it be if Kane Womack winds up as a defensive analyst at Ole Miss if the Tide fires him? He'd be a big help. You want that guy on your staff. Is Deshaun Womack out? I have not heard that, but I think this team is better than 24 on offense at every spot other than quarterback. I agree with that. Didn't recall any injuries after the game with Simmons being okay. Yeah, I don't either, but we'll get that first report tomorrow night. So Florida versus LSU could be interesting. I hope it is, James. I hope it's an interesting game. I want it to be. Not sure Georgia Tech isn't just better than Clemson. I think they are. USF has the golden opportunity to make the playoff as the G6 representative. Absolutely. They've got not just the win, they've got 2 wins, right? Boise State is a significant win, especially how badly they beat them. But they went to the swamp and won, regardless of how bad Florida is. If they just can be competitive with Miami this weekend, they're in the driver's seat to get that spot. Clemson looks bad, which is reflecting some back on LSU as well. Yeah, especially with how LSU looked in week 2. To start with the Giants in the next few weeks, because I think he will. Yeah, he might be the starter by the time they get to New Orleans. So I got to run, guys. Really appreciate you. We'll be back on Thursday. I'll have an interview with somebody that covers Arkansas for that episode as well. But we will be live on Thursday. So, and yes, I did see that AP voter. She very clearly didn't do an ounce of research. And I'll be honest, like I think the polls are worthwhile. At the end of the day, does the AP poll truly, quote unquote, matter? I guess not. But it does shape perception. Fans care about it. It shapes conversation. It helps recruiting. It does a lot. And so if you have the responsibility of a vote, I think you should take it seriously. And her explanation she was essentially just kind of running on vibes. Like she just picked on vibes. It was just embarrassing is what it was. I don't think, I think it's as simple as she's not willing to admit that she didn't look before she voted and just assumed Florida won. But that was an embarrassment. And now you've got these people that cover college football that are talking about, oh, well, it's so hard to cover a game and keep up with what else is going on. No, it's not. No, it's not at all. And if you think it is, fine. Don't take on the responsibility of being an AP poll voter. Somebody else will actually care about doing it the right way. Also, somebody that covers LSU did a really bad job as well. Dropped Ole Miss out of his poll after beating Kentucky. Just nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. But her explanation really highlighted the flaw in the process. But anyway, all right, guys. I'll see you on Thursday. Y'all have a good one.